I'm not gonna lie, man. I called you one of my oldest friends in the fighting game community. I didn't even know you left the state. I forgot you left the state. Rather, I just thought you were
I
all like.
I left like a thief in the night. I didn't tell nobody. Like people messaged me and then they were like, "Hey, you want to hang out?" I'm like, "I'm not even here." Like as soon as like I was just hanging out with people one day and then I was legit like packed up my truck and left the next.
Oh man, yeah. Because I
I
just remember, I remember like you at UAT, and then there's like a blank spot, and you ended up, and you were at Hazes. So I was like, oh, I guess I just didn't see him for a while. But no, as you were gone.
yeah, I was gone for like 2 years.
Hello, hello, and welcome to the Absolute Guard podcast.
This is episode 27. My name is Benny. I'm back. This is 2023. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Jon, who is on his journey to become a married man. How you doing today, Jon?
Pretty good. We are on that journey. We got engaged this past April, and we're in the midst of wedding planning right now, and that's been a fun adventure. We're actually gonna go see the the wedding venue next Tuesday, a week from today, and that'll be a fun one. So maybe this is a good time to bring up some podcast news, and that we will be taking a 2 week break after this episode today, and so we'll be returning with a show on the 23rd of January. Or sorry, 24th of January.
24th.
I can't do calendars for some reason. 24th of January. So I'll be up in Cottonwood on the 10th, and then I'll be in Hawaii on the 17th. So I'll be out of office basically.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so who do we have on the show today?
So today we have a good friend of mine, one of my oldest friends in the fighting game community, T-Dot, Terrence Carter. He is not just a fighting game player, but also a tournament organizer, formerly of the Arizona scene. He's now located in Texas. He and I used to work together to run tournaments under the Spiral Series banner, but he also has tournament organizer experience way further back and working with pretty much every organizer in the Valley, as well as being president of QCF, who we talked to Neff about QCF a couple episodes back. So, yeah, what do you think of T-Dot, Benny?
Yeah, like I said, or like you said, I mean, he's been, I always see him around, like helping out tournament wise. If I'm not, playing him or seeing him play matches, so kind of just been around the scene and pretty much run into him everywhere, whether it was Hazes, various different games, like yeah, just somebody I always see around the scene.
A constant within the Arizona scene for sure. We'll bring
Yeah.
him on right now. Welcome, T-Dot.
What's up?
How's it
Yep.
going?
Yep.
It's going pretty good. Living a good life in Texas.
Yeah.
A good
Yeah. I
Enjoying
forgot that you.
seasons again.
How's your power grid? Is it still working?
Power Grid's been holding on, so ain't too much to complain so far.
Very cool.
Yeah, so you were on the previous show when I was gone doing the Street Fighter 6 beta
Yeah.
panel with Scott and Jeff and John, and then today is basically going to be your kind of introduction episode. Let people get to know you. So typically, like the way we like to start is to find out the origin between your gamer tag, which I know you as T-Dot or T-Dotimus. So how did that come around?
Well, that came from my nickname T-Dot because the T-Dot came before T-Donimus. And my nickname came because in high school there were 7 Terrences in my grade.
Oh goodness.
And so like every Terrence had a nickname. And so after an eventful field trip, somebody was pretending to be me and said that his name was T-Dot Carter because of Jay-Z.
I was just thinking about.
He was going by S. Dot Carter around that
Yeah,
time.
I was just thinking about that earlier today because I was like, I wonder how T-Dot came about, and I was just like, I was a big Jay-Z fan in high school, and I was just like, is it because S. Carter? Because I started putting it all
Exactly.
together, and I was
It
like,
was exactly that. And
oh,
then like after the field
that's
trip,
awesome.
somehow it just stuck. And then some of my other friends found out that didn't go on the field trip, and
Yeah.
they found out that my name was T Dot, and they had a ball, and so they just started just saying like T.com, and then they were like one of the things they said was like T. Dotimus Prime. I was like, you know what? That's actually kind of nice. I like that one. And so I just went with that for my gamer tag, and then shortened it when I was too lazy to the T. Dotimus.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, like I said, that's what I was thinking about this morning because I never really like tried to, I think about it, and then I was just like, I wonder how it came about that. So to hit to for you to get that confirmation, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So another customary question we ask of new guests here is, when did you get started playing fighting games?
I have been playing fighting games about as long as I've been organizing tournaments, but they haven't been connected at all.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Um, from the fighting games point of view, I've just always liked fighting games as a kid. And so I would always play fighting games. And then I'm a kid from a small town, so I would play friends around and I would win, and then they wouldn't want to play anymore. So I was playing fighting games for the solo experience, the single player experience.
Yeah.
But I was having a lot of fun playing through them and getting to the arcade and stuff like that. And I had like a very different experience because I found out later on that a lot of fighting game players that used to play a lot played from like the Super Nintendo side. And I didn't get a Super Nintendo until like way later. And so I played on Genesis stuff. So I was stuck with playing Street Fighter where you had your three buttons that's punch. And if you wanted to kick, you had to push start to switch your buttons over until you got like a 6-button controller for Genesis. And so like that was part of the reason why like as a kid I didn't really like Street Fighter.
It's too big of a pain to mess with the controls.
Yeah. But then like later actually like my favorite Genesis fighting game was the TMNT Tournament Fighters, which was
Oh, okay.
way
Oh.
different from like the NES and the Super Nintendo one. In fact, I didn't even know those existed until like college, and somebody wanted to do a tournament. I was like, yeah, I want to do that. And then they showed me the Super Nintendo one. I'm like, where are the planets? I don't know what any of this is.
Weren't the characters different too? Like, wasn't Chrome Dome only
Everything
in
was
one of them?
different.
Oh, really?
Like
Okay.
Chrome Dome wasn't in the Sega one. The Sega one, like the Super Nintendo one and the NES one were kind of similar. There was like a tournament on Earth and stuff like that. Sega one completely different. There was different planets, and then you're going around space fighting different clones, like the evil clones of people.
Oh,
And Casey
wow.
Jones was in there, and he had bombs that he would place down. And there was like a grappler bug and a manta ray dude, and it was all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah, I forgot about all those differences. I just pulled it up real quick, and like some of the levels, they look like they're straight out of like Contra, like they're like inside like alien bodies or stuff like
Yes,
that.
that's what I was like. What is this? This looks too normal. What is it?
TMNT always had that science fiction background. I think that like, kind of skipped on a lot of the pop culture stuff where they go out into space and fight the Triceratons and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the remarks you made earlier was that you started fighting games young and you started running tournaments young, but they weren't related. So did you run other tournaments when you were younger as
Uh,
well?
yeah. Well, like I got into making brackets as like a thing because I enjoyed sports. And
Hmm.
so I would always watch like the NBA playoffs and the NFL playoffs, and I would make brackets for them. I would take like paper and tape it together and take markers and like make giant brackets as a kid. And then like I was a fan of wrestling too. And so like one of my favorite pay-per-views was King of the Ring, which was a giant tournament where
Yeah,
they would just go through. And so like I would take like my wrestling toys and just make brackets and
Oh wow.
play with my wrestlers and just
Yeah.
make tournaments and like make up rules for them and stuff like that. And so like I always enjoyed the tournament modes in things and just doing random tournaments.
Very
And then
structured play, it sounds like.
yeah. And like when I got to college, before I came to Arizona, I went to Texas A&M for 2 years. I worked at this place called Play, which was like a gaming bar kind of thing. It's kind of like TGZ, except imagine the game room was separated into little tiny rooms, so everybody could play their own game in a system in a separate room.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And we would have Halo tournaments there. And so they were all networked together. And so like a team would be in one and a different team would be in another, and they would be networked and play.
Nice. So that was Halo 1 then?
No, I think that was Halo 2.
Okay.
Halo 2, like around the time Halo 2 just came out.
All right. Oh, I get it. So yeah, they would just, you'd have one team in a room and then they'd be on a split screen together, right? And probably cursing each other out. Then the other room had a different team. Okay. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So when did the fighting games and the love of brackets start intersecting?
At Play, we did have a tournament for Soul Calibur that I ran, but that Soul Calibur was never my jam because I hated ring outs. And so like I would get really frustrated and salty whenever I got ring out. And then but my cousin showed me Third Strike, and I was like, wait, there was a Street Fighter 3? When was this? Because this was like 2005 when I was finding this out.
Okay.
And he showed me that, and he's like, oh, you've never seen this. And so like he showed me like the Daigo parry and everything. I was like, wait, there's tournaments? Where? Like, where's all this stuff happening? And so like from there, I just was playing, and I still didn't know like where the tournaments were.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until I moved to Arizona they were like, oh yeah, we have like a tournament here every month. I was like, yeah, oh okay, yes, this is the college I would like to transfer to, please.
Very cool. Yeah, because
so,
like to kind of place you in the timeline of Arizona history here, like there's always that, like we have the old guys who came about when the fighting games were first invented and they were playing ST and whatnot. And then we have the 09ers that started with Street Fighter 4. But there was this middle period in the Dark Ages where I think right around when the Daigo parry happened, or when the Tokido Urian versus Justin Wong match happened, and they realized all this depth to Third Strike, there's like a very tight-knit subset of players, I think, that came into the scene at that time. So they were almost OG, but more than an 09er at least. And like Rock, I think, falls under that. Abe falls under that. I think yourself now too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. When did you end up coming to Arizona? Like what year was that?
That was 2007.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was basically like right when John was talking about. Yeah, it's funny like you talk about the in terms of like not knowing about Street Fighter 3 or just like tournaments and stuff, because like I remember looking at gaming magazines and like I would see tournament results and I'd see these names right in California or whatever, Illinois, whatever, wherever these places were. I remember seeing, like Alex Valle, those kind of names come up, and like I just never like kind of put it all together because I was out in Alaska and I was just like, man, where are they doing these things? They're in California. I'll never go over there. And just like it kind of just went in the back of my mind. But then like, as I got older, and it was just like, there's these other events going on. It's just like, it's been happening this whole time. And it's just something that just wasn't a part of my world. It's kind of sounds like it was kind of similar for you, right? Like it was just like you were kind of doing your own thing. And it's just like, then you found out about all this other stuff and you're just like, oh man, there's this whole community and whole tournament structure and all this other stuff going on.
Yeah, it was like almost maddening. I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me about this? Like I would have did this sooner. Like
To go a little bit meta for a sec here, Benny, for the show that you were out, when T-Dot and I were on the beta show last week, Alex Valle was actually like watching our show and in the chat. So this is the second time that T-Dot and Alex Valle have been tied together on the Absolute Card podcast. If you go back and watch that VOD, you can see him talking to us on the stream chat. So that's pretty funny.
Oh, nice.
Cool. So, all right. So you transferred over to this school. I'm guessing that school was the University of Advancing Technology.
Yep.
So, my understanding is that they had that fighting game club called Quarter Circle Forward there. And so, how did you rise through the ranks there? Did you join that club initially? Did you found the club, or like what?
Oh, I did
what
not
brought you
found
there?
the club. It was already there. But that actually QCF was one of like the main factors of me coming to UAT, because before I started, I came that summer to like check out the school and see if this was like something I wanted to do, move out of state, and like pretty much just take this risk of like leaving Texas A&M to come here on like for game programming, which I didn't know if that would work out or not, or what have you. And I came there and I went through like school stuff and that was fine. But then like I came back that night because they were having like an event, like food and stuff. And it turns out they were having tournaments, and they had like a Third Strike tournament and a Tekken 5 tournament. I think Tekken 5, maybe like Tekken 5 DR.
That was one on the PS2, right?
Yeah. I want to say it's that one. It was
Okay.
what's happening right then. And actually, that's where I met Jelani.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Because like he was at the tournament, and so, yeah, I played through and met those couple of other folks from like QCF and stuff, and I was like, yeah, this is something I want to do. And then when I actually enrolled and like came back, I met Neff and I met another friend, Steve, who coincidentally, like I met him from like my dorm, and we were just hanging out, and he's like, oh yeah, I also play fighting games. I'm going to QCF. I'm like, oh yes, I remember this. Yeah, let's go.
Nice.
Yeah, and just to clarify, by Steve, you're talking about Steve Gannon, Nitro Frost?
No, not
the other
Steve
Steve.
Gannon. I can't say his nickname on here because wait, we don't curse, right?
Oh, you can.
We can, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. His name is fucking Steve. Because like whenever he was like, you know how people have like, we're like they're thinking of the word, they're like he wouldn't say he would say fucking, and so he would constantly say fucking.
Wow, okay. That's a hell of a nickname. Like that could be interpreted so many different ways.
Yeah, I love it.
To backtrack too, you also mentioned that you met Jelani, and Jelani is also known as Rocknan, who composed the theme song for the Absolute Guard podcast.
True.
So you can see how T-Dot's history is interwoven with ours.
Yeah.
Cool. So at that point, you're a member of the club, and what happens after? How do you rise through the ranks to ultimately become the T-Dot?
I don't even remember rising. It was just kind of a thing that happened. We've been friends for like I say years, but like at that time it was probably like a year, but it felt like years. And like a bunch of us, we were just hanging out a lot, and we were like the go-to group for us, just hanging out, whether it be fighting games or not. And so when we got to a certain point of like we started slowing down on our tournaments for some reason, and I couldn't remember why at that point. And I think it was just like the people in charge had like other commitments, and I was just sitting around with the other guys one day, and I was like, yeah, we know how to run the tournament. We can just get together, like have the tournament, and then like just tell the people that have like these monthly things that hey, we're doing a QCF thing down here at Cuban Pete's, which is like our lunch, our food cafeteria area.
Oh, okay.
And that Cuban Pete's was pretty much like the area that for fighting games and also Smash. Well, Smash is a fighting game, but I'm not getting into that debate. But yeah, it was like 3 monitors, and they would have systems connected to it, and usually 2 of the 3 were taken up by some sort of fighting game.
Okay, cool. So at the time, like, what games were you playing in? Like, what were you playing in?
At the time, everything that would show up. Like if people brought it, I would play it. Like I am not really I wouldn't call myself a Guilty Gear player, but I would play Guilty Gear. Like anytime people would bring like CVS 2, people would bring Marvel, people would bring Third Strike, people would bring Tekken, people brought Soul Calibur. We already talked about that, but I would still play it. But like, Smash Brothers. My roommate at the time was a big Smash Brothers player, and I would play with him all the time. And so, like, anytime they would bring something, I would play it.
Nice.
Yeah, and so like I was having those conversations of like, yeah, we can just do it. And they're like, all right, T-Dot, you're in charge. I'm like, wait, what? And so like it kind of got thrust upon me that like, okay, like I'm kind of like in charge of that part. And then later on, there was Nick, who was actually our president he wasn't. He was kind of our president at the time, but he was kind of like leaving. It was he was leaving at the time, and then oh yes, and Goku Bazaar. Yeah, I remember that. Bazaar. Oh man, but there was a guy. Y'all know him, Dorian.
Yeah.
He wanted to have. He was looking for a place to have his like tournaments, his Rambats. And so he was like, oh, yeah, we're going to have it at UAT. And some of the UAT people were like, yeah, that's fine. And my job at UAT was security. And so that also took care of like assigning rooms for things. And I was like, wait. You can't just say that you're going to do something. You have to like check out a room. Somebody has to be in charge. And like going through all this, and Dorian's like, well, come to my house and we'll talk about it. I'm like, what? Who are you? You're just a random person I talked to this one day on Shuriken forum. But we ended up going to Dorian's house, and you know Dorian, he's very cool, very welcoming. Like his door is literally always open. And so we talked it out, and I was like, all right, cool. So I can reserve the rooms. And so that's what I did was I started reserving the rooms. And then from then somewhere in there, I was like, oh, now I'm president of QCF.
I guess there's a point. Yeah, you're running the brackets. You're coordinating with the outside vendors, so to speak, right? And bringing people in and then reserving the room. So yeah, you're basically doing the president's job, huh?
Doing the TO work, man.
So it was just kind of like, wait, we can't do that because of this. And I'm like, and then other people were like, oh, you know how to do that? Go ahead, you're in charge. And then like that's how I constantly fell into like authority type positions.
Executive T-Dot. He's the guy who gets shit done. So that makes sense. And so, sorry, what this was in 2009, or was this?
Yes.
Okay, so basically, right when Street Fighter 4 came out.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Rambats were specifically for Street Fighter 4.
New tournaments were happening.
Got it. Okay.
And then we started having were they weekly or bi-weekly? Those Rambats.
Like every other week, I think.
Yeah, like every other week. And so, and shout outs to everybody who showed up for those, because like we could have gotten in a lot of trouble if people started like messing stuff up and left out a bunch of trash, because like that exact thing happened with the Smash guys. And
Oh,
so like shout outs to everyone for like staying after, helping like putting the desk back, putting like everything back to where it was supposed to be, and cleaning up everybody your own messes and stuff like that. Cause like that really helped out a lot. And that helped kept it going for as long as it did.
nice.
Yeah, you'll be surprised how many people just like, I mean, that's real basic kind of stuff, right? You're borrowing somebody's space, and it's just like, we just need to put this back the way that it was before. Like, if you guys could help out with that, and it's just like, you'd be surprised how many people are just like, they don't care, and it's just like,
Yeah,
it's like a free space that we're borrowing. We're not even paying for this kind of thing, and you guys can't,
exactly.
can't do the basic stuff to kind of help us out so we can maintain this.
Yeah, I told a big like story when Neff was on about QCF and about UAT and how those tournaments that you just mentioned, those Rambat tournaments, were some of the first tournaments that I ever went to, or actually the first tournaments that I ever went to. And so I mean it when I say that if it wasn't for T-Dot, I wouldn't be in the fighting game community. If it wasn't for QCF and Neff and company, right? Like I just wouldn't be in the scene. So thanks very much, T.
I
Yeah,
Now
like
try.
everybody has to deal with my shit.
Yes, everyone. And I love it.
Okay, so moving forward, then the Rambats were a resounding success from my perspective. What happened after the Rambats? Like, where did you move to next as far as tournament organizing goes?
Oh, I guess there's one big part that we kind of skipped over,
Oh, okay, go for it.
which was back in 2000, like the beginning of 2008.
Mhm.
I went, uh, me and some friends went to Phoenix Comic Con, and
Ah,
that was like the first big Comic Con thing I ever went to. And my time there was taken up by the gaming room because like they were like, oh yeah, I'll show up for a tournament. When y'all having a tournament? Like all the time, every game. I was like, yeah, yeah, I'll just sign up for everything. Fuck it. Like I don't know how to play this game. I don't care. Let's play. Let's go. And so like I signed up for like all the tournaments, just playing in all the tournaments, and that's how I ended up meeting Frank.
Frank
Was like,
Castle of
yeah,
Arizona Hobbyist Paradise at the time. That's what it was known for, I believe. And like
yeah,
when I hear like con tournament, all games all the time, I definitely think of
Yeah.
AZHP.
yeah. And so like that, like I actually ended up playing him in like Third Strike and Tekken, and some of the other ATHP guys like Kane and stuff like that. And through that, he was like, "Yeah, we should just hang out, and then you should just join and help run tournaments. So then you can just get into all the cons for free." I was like, "Yeah, I bet." Like I'm a broke college student. I would like to go to cons for free. And
Yeah.
like, what do I have to do? Run tournaments of the games that I'm already playing? Sure.
That's
Like,
awesome.
yeah,
That's a sweet deal.
yeah. And so like that's how I became friends with Frank. We started hanging out a lot, and we started. I would help a lot with like setting up tournaments and running tournaments and doing that sort of thing. Even to the point of, uh, I'm not sure if I'm still the only one so far, but I know for a fact at the time I was the first person other than Frank himself to like run an ACHP thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like ironically, it was the Sabotin Con right before I left Arizona in 2009. That was my last event, but like Frank wanted to be more hands off and do like photography at the time. And so at that point I was like, all right, like yeah, I can run it. And so like I was like the main person in charge, like delegating and running tournaments and telling like what do we do with this stuff. We'll put that stuff over there. We'll set up the room like this. Da 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 da. That stuff.
Okay.
So yeah,
So like full on event organizing, not just running the bracket, but actually
yeah,
being the full on TO there. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess so. Like it sounds like the AZHP through line and then the Ranbat through line. They were happening simultaneously with each other, and then over time the Ranbats, I believe, changed hands or dissipated at the very least. I think they went to Rick, and then you continued working with AZHP. Is that right?
Yeah, well, yeah, like uh I worked with Rambats all up until I graduated, which was 2009, at the end of
Mhm.
2009. At the end of 2009, I handed Neff the keys and left the state.
It's yours now.
Yeah, because like I was done, and actually the vice president was Vince, who was also done at the same time as me. And so I was like, all right, well, it can't be me, can't be Vince. Neff, here you go.
Okay.
And I also, because I moved states, I also stopped AZHP. Um, and then I met a couple of friends back home, because like now I know about the Shuriken forums, and so I met a
Mm.
couple of guys and we started playing games and stuff. This was around the time Street Fighter 4 was about to come out.
Okay. So
Okay.
like 2010 sounds like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
2010.
yeah. So like with DJ, T Hog, Cody, and all them.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I didn't do any TOing. I didn't really enter any tournaments, because there weren't any tournaments that I knew about at the time. And so I was just on an island playing fighting games online. I was solely relying on online fighting games for 2010 and 2011. And then after I did some grad school, I decided to come back to Arizona.
Okay.
And then once I came back, I met Haz, and I kind of ended up falling back into what I was doing before. I was back with Frank doing ADHP stuff. I was now teaming up with Haz to do Rambat stuff at his place.
Okay, so that
And
was around,
yeah,
you said 2011, 2012,
yeah.
around that time? Okay. Yeah, because that's basically like when I came, yeah, I came here in 2012. Okay.
I'm not gonna lie, man. I called you one of my oldest friends in the fighting game community. I didn't even know you left the state. I forgot you left the state. Rather, I just thought you were
I
all like.
I left like a thief in the night. I didn't tell nobody. Like people messaged me and then they were like, "Hey, you want to hang out?" I'm like, "I'm not even here." Like as soon as like I was just hanging out with people one day, and then I was legit like packed up my truck and left the next.
Oh man. Yeah, because I
I
just remember, like you at UAT, and then there's like a blank spot, and you ended up, and you were at Haz's. So I was like, oh, I guess I just didn't see him for a while. But no, as you were gone.
Yeah, I was gone for like 2 years.
Okay.
Oh man, that's great.
Wow. Okay,
But
so
yeah,
you're back, and you're hanging out with Haz and Frank again. You're running brackets again, doing what you do best there, right? So what
yeah.
happens after that?
Um, business as usual. Um, KOF 13 came out.
Oh
I
yeah.
won some things on that. Not too many things, but I won some things. Um, I guess next big milestone would be Spiral Series.
Oh. Okay. Uh, I guess we haven't really ever talked about what Spiral Series is on the show. Like obviously, like we're like if you're watching us on YouTube, you're on the Spiral Series channel, and if you're watching us on Twitch right now, you're on the Spiral Series Twitch channel.
Hmm.
But if I could kind of interject here, so I
Yeah.
think what happened was I. It didn't even was it. It was just like a name that we used to run a tournament called Here Comes Some New Challengers, I think. And that was just like we needed to like I wanted to run a tournament that uh was a free tournament, which was very different than some of the high stakes Ranbats and stuff. I wanted to just run one that says, you know, like every year at Evo, like July or August timeframe, we would we would all go to Evo, we would have fun, and then the community would explode back home. Like everybody would see the stream for Evo or want to suddenly get into fighting games or want to get back into fighting games, and so the numbers always popped up really high after an Evo, and then brought in new people as well. And so what I wanted to do originally was just be like, let's run a tournament that's free and has like that Evo feel of BYOC and have a bunch of different games and whatnot. And I had like no experience running an event at all. And I was just kind of running off of the Goodwill brand that I had as a player and the nice guy stuff that I was doing for Haz and whatnot. And so I think it was, I forget how, like I ended up making contact with you about that, T-Dot, but it was just like, hey, do you want to do this together? And you were like, yeah, hell yeah. Cause that was another reason, is because we had it at UAT and you still had connections at UAT, right? And that was basically our venue.
Yeah. Like you ended up hitting me up saying that you wanted to try something different for the tournament. And so it was like you said, and I was like, sure. Cause like you said, it was kind of like a lull during that time. And so I was like, yeah, I'm not doing anything. Yeah, I'll run another tournament. Why not?
Yeah, actually, yeah, you're bringing it back for me, because that's what happened. Is after Evo, traditionally all the old guys would just be like, okay, this is the off season. We spent all this time grinding for Evo, and now it's time to take a break, go back to real life for a little bit. And I think the answer I had was like, well, no, like we should. All these people that want to suddenly play fighting games, we need to put ourselves in front of them and grow the scene that way. And I think that's how that turned out. Yeah. So yeah, we ended up running that tournament. It was a really big success, and I think one thing led to another, and we ended up getting hold of the Ranbats too, and taking Spiral Series further.
Yeah,
right.
Because I think that one was MujiCon, but because MujiCon wasn't originally called MujiCon.
Yeah, it was called Here Comes Some New Challengers.
And yeah, but no one could remember the name. And so right. I think it was Armando might have said it first, but like Angelic, he might have called it first, but like he started saying MujiCon, and everybody just started calling it MujiCon. Yeah. I was like, yeah, MujiCon.
Yeah, it was a little bit easier to remember. So, okay. And then so I think after that, we got hold of the Ranbats, and it was like, what other events can we run, right? And I do remember one of your biggest ideas was an event called Bar Fights too, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Bar Fights was just an idea that I've seen it. I had seen it done like in other places, and I'm like, why not here? And so, and then I think Rick had talked about that they had a tournament one time at a bar where like they got together and they got like food and stuff. And so I was like, yeah, why don't we try to do that again? And so I wanted it to be different from a normal tournament. So I wanted it to be like money matches and like team events and like grudge matches. And like everyone just having a good time, like something that would be a spectacle that everybody would want to watch while they're like chilling and having drinks and food and stuff. So like the place that we're at is getting money while we're still having a good time and like having a stream and stuff like that.
Yeah, the ironic part there was that as somebody who like gained fame for being the best bracket runner in the state, like the Bar Fights, which was like your pet idea, ended up not having a bracket whatsoever. It was all about exhibition matches. So we got to chill out and have fun and enjoy the show too, right?
Yeah. It was the best plan.
And it was in this bar that's no longer around, but it was I think it was in Scottsdale, if I recall correctly. I forget the name of the bar.
Oh no, it's still technically Phoenix. It was Armadillo Grill.
No, I'm talking about the one before that. We had
the one bar before. Oh, yeah, that one's gone.
Yeah, I think you had a friend named Faraday who worked there, right? And we just had a connection with somebody on this like kind of like hole in the wall bar. It wasn't quite like a dive bar or anything because it was like a hipster bar more than anything else. It had like really beautiful lighting and murals and stuff, and we just had all the fighting game community in that room in Arizona in that room at that point, and we're just it was Street Fighter 4 and Marvel 3 if I recall correctly that were the main featured items. Um,
I'm trying to think if I went to that one because Armadillo Girl. Yeah, that I remember that name. I think that's the one because I didn't participate in any of the like the few that I went to start. It was much later when I started being involved in like matches and stuff like that. But like yeah, now I'm trying to think of the one that you're talking about, John. I don't think I was at that one. When did when
I
did you, when do you think that one was at, or what year was that?
I should know that. I can actually look that up right now, but I don't know that as well as I thought I did. I remember that Faraday hooked us up, and
Yeah.
she even like made special drink specials for us. Like I think there was a green
Uh,
apple one called Cammy's Sweet Ass.
Yeah. That
I
was
think I
Um,
would
really good.
remember that, so I'm pretty sure I
That was
wasn't
really
there.
good. I like the Apple one.
yeah, here, let me look up. So this looks like it was in 2012. I can quickly show a picture here if I can show it on stream here to the
If it was
people
in
watching.
2012, like 2012, I pretty much went to that one Ranbat in like March, and then I had to like get out of the scene because I was busy like working and stuff.
I don't even remember if that lines up with when you were in Arizona, but this is the
Yeah, SNK
to the
with the
people who
hat.
are listening on audio. We are currently showing a picture of this Facebook image that I posted for. It was our cover page for the long time on the Spiral series, and it was just this. Again, it was like a tiny hipster bar, but everybody just was there
Yeah,
hanging out, drinking, and having fun. And
yeah.
that
I don't think I went to that one.
okay. And so when we say that one, that's the other thing is that this wasn't just a single event. Bar Fights was such a
Yeah.
big hit, I believe that we ended up doing it again at the Armadillo Grill in Central
Mhm.
Phoenix, and that was
Yeah.
also a pretty decent success, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I think that's the one because that's the one I remember. That's the one where I was hanging out with Nico. I think that's where he played Ernest, and yeah, there was some Marvel 3 I think back there too. And yeah, I mean, yeah, bar fights. Like I've always looked forward to stuff like that. The Ranbats and the traditional stuff is always fun, but to have some other things on the side, like whether it was bar fights or the invitational stuff that Abe would run. Like I was always looking forward to kind of offbeat kind of stuff too.
Yeah, I remember like we had a rule that it was like anybody that anybody that had any kind of money match or wanted to put money on the line, like we had stations that were dedicated only to that.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
nowadays, I'm like, I wonder if we've broken any gambling laws or not. But and if I'm just
Well, I
admitting
don't
that
know.
on the stream, but
Supposedly, like I don't know. I don't know. That's a big thing with some venues because they're like, well, we can't give cash prizes because they don't allow that in Arizona. And I was just like, so what have we been doing for the last 10 years?
yeah,
No, no gambling. It's just friendly exchange of money between friends and stuff.
Yeah.
yeah, between friends. Yep, yeah.
Just
Never mind if
gifts
somebody's
going
really
around, just
angry.
gifts.
But yeah, like the Armadillo Grill, I remember it because that was a full-on restaurant, and we just happened to have like a booking of the area, the party room area, and we're just like, can we get
Yeah.
internet and power? And then there was like another like back area where we put all the money matches, and we put the team exhibitions in the main restaurant area. So we actually had some people that were at the bar watching games, like watching sports, who were
Yeah.
like just wander in and would see us playing and be like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" And that was
Yeah.
I think that was when we had people from Vegas fly in or drive in rather, and it was Team Hitbox versus Team Arizona really. And
Mhm.
Team Hitbox is a very different name nowadays, but like we're talking about the founders of Hitbox, Dustin and his brother, like they they had their and Raleigh and company. Like a lot of people are actually man the hitbox booths at Evo. They drove down to visit with us and then do a 5v5, and then in Cross Tekken I believe we had a Phoenix versus Tucson as well, and that was a 5v5 I think as well.
Probably.
And we had some hype matches because Rock was playing and Sam was playing, and both of them play oddball characters, and it was a really good show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was always a blast. Those bar fights.
yeah.
I,
I
I would
think
like to think that everyone had a good time.
Yeah, no, because I think what happened afterwards is like after we kind of stopped running events in general, like Steve Gannon and company continued the
Mm.
theme of bar fights, and they brought it to Endgame, and we
Yeah.
haven't had one recently, but I'm sure there'll be another one now that the pandemic is starting to cool down, I suppose.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, those were fun too. Because I even had a friend come out to that one bar fights, like you said, at Endgame, because it was just like, invite somebody to like a traditional tournament, like that's kind of but it was just like, hey, you want to come hang out at this bar, and just
Hmm.
it's a more public, like more casual kind of setting. Yeah, I had a friend come out to that, which is pretty cool.
And that was before like the barcade craze even happened. Like nowadays, it's
Yeah,
like
Yeah,
barcades are popular
just
again
popping up
before
everywhere.
the pandemic, but they were pop. Yeah, and the idea of playing video games at a bar was just really foreign. So again, T-Dot, you're ahead of the curve.
If only I gotten some money from it.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, hey, I wanted to tell you by the way, I'm starting to give away some of the equipment that we bought. Like remember we bought a bunch of those Asus monitors because
Yeah.
again back then, like nowadays a TO is like, okay, I just need to find a venue that has the equipment, but back then when we were running brackets, like we always had to find ways to secure setups and have people bring
Exactly.
them,
Yeah.
and yeah, and
Yeah.
like and so I remember T Dot and I went half and half on a bunch of Asus monitors, which were the Evo standard at the time, and we also like I remember we bought Renix Xbox with like copies
Yeah.
of all three of those games, and so for a long time I had like three Xboxes in my home. And then I think were you there when I went to Fry's and met up with Scott, who was working there at the time, and he gave us a bunch of
Oh
discount on
yes.
cables. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we talk about not getting any money, it was like the exact opposite, and that we sunk a fair amount of money into
Yeah. And we
it.
bought
Yeah.
what was it? It was like one of those outdoor lawn plugs, extension
Oh
cords,
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
we needed like a long extension cord.
For
And so
bar
we
fights,
got,
right?
yeah, for bar fights. And so like we got one of those industrial like lawn ones that you could like plug like three of them in, but had like a really long wrapped around cord. And so I was like, oh, this is perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was super cheap too, because I guess the markup on cables is really really high, but at
Yeah.
store discount, it was way easier. By the way, I hope we're not getting Scott in any trouble right now, but thank you very much for supporting the fighting game community, Scott Saber Bender. Oh
Yeah,
man.
man. There's a lot of costs involved with being a TO that people don't realize, like hidden costs, or I mean, well, not really hidden costs, but just like costs for things that you normally wouldn't think about. Like you said, like you need an extension cable, but an ordinary, like regular extension cable for your house isn't gonna work. You need something that's gonna be able to power a bunch of Xboxes or PlayStations and monitors and stuff like that. You need something better.
Yep. I'm actually right now I've been starting to throw away some of those cables. Like actually this stream is powered by one of those cables, and one of the longer ones went bad a couple of years back when I was using it for my TV. And then nowadays like we're at HDMI 2.1, so they're outdated anyway. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
uh
I had one of those 100-foot Ethernet cords that we used to use, and
yeah.
that went bad like during pandemic.
Nice, nice. Well,
I
I
think
mean,
so.
yeah, but
One other noteworthy thing I wanted to bring up with the Spiral Series era is that we ran our first set of Ranbats at UAT, but after like we got kind of tired of UAT, so to speak. Like every tournament had been run up there for for a good 5 or 6 years at that point, and then it has as well. But we wanted to find another kind of venue that would be a little bit more amenable to the fighting game community. And I believe Frank Castle had
Yeah,
a relationship with the Gaming Zone people, and I think T Dot and I were kind of like we heard it like T Dot. I think you heard about it through Frank, and then we ended up.
yeah,
It was your idea to actually go engage the TGZ people and see if they would be interested in it, right?
yeah.
And they,
And like the brothers are real cool, and they were really cool about it. And uh, yeah, just being able to go to them and like talk it out and figure out how this could even possibly work. I
yeah,
think it ended up working like as great as it possibly could.
Yeah, this was back on their older location, which was smaller. They had a gaming lounge, but it was just a bunch of cupboards that had wall-mounted TVs with a ton of lag. So we were just like, hey, those cupboards are perfect for us to bring our own equipment on, and we could just put them on top. And to those watching the video feed right now, the Killer Instinct tournament that you see on the video feed there is exactly that.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, and I remember like that day we didn't even get to meet one of the brothers. We just met Alejandro, if I recall correctly, and we were just like, "Hey, this is our idea. We want to try this out." And we had, I think this is season 2 of the Rambats, and it was like or the first Rambat we had at UAT, and the second Rambat we had at TGZ, and we were telling the community, being like, "Hey, you guys have to pay a little bit of extra, you have to pay a venue fee to get in here, but we want to try it out and see what it's like." It's also smaller, and I was worried about that. I was worried about it smelling like ass, like literally, because it was so crowded in there. We tried to prep the brothers for that, but then when we had the tournaments, it was like a resounding yes from the community. Yes, we were willing to pay to get in there because it was the environment was like gaming oriented. They had like chip tunes playing on the speakers, and it was just a less sterile environment than UAT, which again had treated us well, but so I think we even pivoted and we're like, all right, well, we're going to do the third one at UAT because that's what we had booked already. But then from then on, every Rambat was at TGZ. And I think we kept it going for a little while, but after a while, you and I kind of faded away as far as tournament organizing goes for the Rambats, and they ended up taking the reins. Like Steve Gannon ended up taking the reins as well, right? Yeah. And TGZ to this day is still a home for the Arizona fighting game community, and so I credit T-Dot and Frank Castle with helping us find that home.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Like, yeah, I didn't know about that whole thing with Frank and them. Like, I kind of just, just being a player really at the time was just like, where are people playing games at, and like, just kind of gravitating to whether that was UAT or whether that was, oh, what's this new place?
Yeah.
Yep. So what happens after Spiral Series, T-Dot?
I retire. From a TO standpoint, I don't really help out too much after that. There was a couple of times when like people needed like an extra hand, like Armando would be like, "Hey, can you help out with this?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, sure." And I'll like anytime anybody's like shorthanded and just like hits me up and they're like, "Hey, can you help out?" I'll show up. Not now. Yeah. I'm in 2 good states away. But back then,
pay for my airfare, my lodging. Like, I'll show up. Nice. Well, one thing we wanted to talk about. I mean, one, thank you for sharing. Your history. I'm really happy that whole T-Dot Carter thing. I was right about that. Like, that was my hunch this morning, and I was just like, when you said it, I was just like, yeah, I was fucking spot on. Because it all just made sense. And then also, for sharing your history about the TO stuff and the Spiral series. The one thing we wanted to talk about with you too, just because you do have TO experience, like the big thing going on in the scene in this last week had to do with Maturino and with NYC Furby Arturo. Mm-hmm. So I guess how would you explain it, John, in terms of like the general situation?
Sure. So Arturo had been employed by Maturino, and Maturino had actually been kind of growing a lot over the past couple of years, in particular because online tournaments have started becoming a thing. Basically, a tournament organizer will make an account with them and then kind of work with them to allow for people to go to the Maturino website and then donate, or like these little like goals that they do where they'll chip in a couple cents into the pot. And then that in turn becomes a crowdfunded tournament pot, which was different than anything that we ever organized as local organizers, because we just said, hey, the players, if they pay $5 or whatever the amount is to get in, and then that makes the pot, and then that gets distributed to the winners. But the Maturino aspect of it kind of integrated really well with the streaming culture, and so anybody that was watching on the stream could essentially sign into the Maturino and donate to the pot, whether via these little micro goals or actually with real money with the PayPals and whatnot. So then, as part of that payout structure, Matcherino, like when we start talking about like accepting money from people on the internet, then we get into like tax laws and like your locations. Like you have to talk about local state laws versus country laws versus international laws and whatnot. Like how do you like you have to go extra legit as far as the money goes versus us that just handled it in cash. And so Matcherino acted as a platform to handle a lot of that stuff. But then the payout structure or the payout mechanism was to ultimately pay out to a certain amount of players. The TO could ultimately decide that, but there were always issues as far as like what if the players didn't have a Matcherino account? What if the players were not of age? What if they were located, again, if it's an online tournament, what if they were located in a different country that Matcherino didn't do business in? And so you'd oftentimes run into these intermediary scenarios where somebody who had a relationship with Matcherino would cash out and be awarded the prize money and then distribute that to the fighting game community that way. One of those people was NYC Furby, who it was recently revealed in the past couple days here that he had actually been either late or had been taking percentages of the tournament pot and acting as that intermediary. So, the hot opinions or the hot takes on Twitter basically say that he stole money from the community. We are currently still awaiting additional details from Arturo's side about what happened there. The statements that he's made so far is that everybody is square, everybody's been everybody has been paid out, and Matcherino actually put out a big statement saying that they are no longer working with him due to his mishandling of funds. That's kind of what kicked off this whole thing, and then a bunch of really high profile fighting game community people came out and corroborated the story essentially.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough situation, right? Because I mean, you're talking about it's not somebody that's just new to the scene, right? Within the last few years, this is somebody that's been in the scene for 20 plus years, right? People know him, the OGs in our scene know him, OGs from California, wherever know him, and have played with him in tournaments and run events with him. So it was a tough situation for it to come out the way that it did, I think, because Matcherino literally just tweeted out something, right, and threw his name in there, and we're just like, we're cutting ties. So of course, it's natural for people to kind of put pieces together, right, and just kind of make their own assumptions and just be like, oh man, not like this, or not him, or something like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the other thing is that Matcherino, just as a company, I talked earlier about how they act as the legit version of these tournament payouts and having to comply with local laws and federal laws and whatnot. When you're a company like of that size, you don't just slander someone on the internet lightly. Like you put in the research to figure out and make sure that this is the right call. And so that's what a lot of people were using as the base of being like, if Matcherino's saying this, then it's probably true. Again, the situation is still pretty raw and fresh, and so I think a lot of us are still trying to figure out what exactly happened. But that seems to be the narrative that's prevailing right now, is that there was money that was slipped.
I was trying to figure out like what was going on, because I was like trying to dig through and see like what exactly is going on, like what is the truth, and like you said, there's not much information. One thing I did like from like the different pieces that I found from everywhere is that like this is not like this just happened recently. This has like been like a thing that's happened over months. And so like there was like, I don't know the exact details from point to point, but there was like a trajectory that led to this. This definitely wasn't like something just went bad one day and then pop and we're banning people. No, like some thought went into this.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like John said. Like, I mean, with the Matcherino, because my understanding with Matcherino is like, you register for an account, and that way you can get paid for it, right? So, I mean, it's on you as the player. I mean, it's an extra step, but it's just like, if you want to get paid, like, it's kind of laziness not to just make an account. But if you're not going to do that, then like John said, there's that intermediary, right? And that ended up being Arturo, if he's the tournament organizer or whatever. And in an ideal world, if you're that person that's getting that getting those funds, then you just pass them on. But I mean, I don't know about all the details in terms of like, because I guess for me personally, I was more curious about how like the numbers didn't add up and like people weren't figuring that out, unless there was I guess unless the
Yeah.
numbers that were posted on like Matcherino don't necessarily add up correctly.
I
My
think it would. Oh,
oh, go
go
ahead.
for it.
Go ahead, T-Dot.
Okay. From again, this is just from stuff I'm just trying to pick up,
Yeah.
so I don't know what's 100. But from what I have read, and it was that like everyone was going to Arturo for figuring that out instead of going to Maturino. They didn't have like that direct line to Maturino, and so like
Oh.
everything was coming through Arturo for them,
Yep.
and so
And
like there were like some miscommunications on how long it would take to get paid and how much they were going to get paid and stuff like that.
And Arturo, like in general, has a really strong brand within the FGC as far as like the reason why everyone is like not like this or really upset or sad that this happened in the first place or that this was discovered in the first place at the very least, like was that he had been a prominent streamer. He had been
Mhm.
prominent in pushing for high refresh rate monitors, for reducing input latency, bringing PC sponsors into the fighting game community and whatnot. And so like there was a lot of good things that he was doing for the community on the outside that we just like the all that stuff kind of goes into limbo when you realize that this brand was being used for again, it varies between whether or not you want to look at it as incompetence, if it's a giant misunderstanding, or if it's malicious, and like in that the mishandling of funds were ultimately for Arturo's gain. So,
Yeah.
like, and to be clear too, like one of the issues that T-Dot just mentioned here was that it was the timeliness of payments, which we also have covered on our show before. Locally, we've run into that same issue with Devastation. We had Machiavelli and
Yep.
Yoshi on, where Devastation was notorious for not having paid their players, and the players were very vocal about that, and it was viewed as an embarrassment for the Arizona scene. And eventually, Devastation did pay out, but that tainted brand was still there, and so that's why we don't have Devastation anymore. And so, like when I contrast that with this scenario with Arturo here, we have somebody that had a brand that was kind of through the roof as far as the fighting game community goes,
Yeah.
and it was again kind of being used for not the right reasons.
Yeah, like I mean, I don't want to make without having too much details about what's going on because I mean, we're still
Yeah.
waiting on information. I mean, it's kind of I mean, I could see how it would be kind of easy to kind of I guess skim off the pot, right? Like if I had $100 and I had to pay out, whatever 60, 30, 10 to somebody, right? And I'll be like, okay, it's gonna take like 7 days to process this. It's basically I'm giving myself 7 days to pay them. So if I needed that $100 or some of that $100 to cover something that I needed, then I could do that as long as I was getting the money in time to pay people out, right?
Right.
So I mean, it'd be real easy to kind of do something like that. And I mean, I don't know everybody's situations, and I know one of the things that Arthur,
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
that's a sucky situation. I mean, some people were thinking that maybe he was using some of the funds to potentially help that, and like, I mean, obviously, like we don't know any details, so that's not anything that I'm gonna pile on.
Yeah, I mean, the main reason why we even wanted to talk about this in the first place was more to kind of bring it back to the local level and think about, what can
Yeah,
players do to really protect themselves against these kinds of situations? How to ensure that the tournaments that they're entering are um, going to legitimately pay out. And obviously, that's all. There's always going to be a little bit of inherent trust between the TOs and the players. There should be that.
yeah,
Um,
hmm
but I can say that over the years, I have seen people come in and out of the fighting game community, particularly whenever a new game is released that's hot. So like when
hmm
Street Fighter 4 came out, when Marvel 3 came out, when AE came out, after every Evo, and that's another good example, you'd always get people from outside the community that would come in and be like, okay, so I want to run the next Evo. And they would essentially try to run the event, but it would, they'd bring in outside sensibilities as far as like other esports rule sets, or even the concept of
Yeah.
esports was foreign back then, right? Or like,
Yeah.
just this is what I would do for my friends, or like, hey, I'm gonna run a tournament that I'm gonna run a tournament where I just pocket all the money and you get to play for free, or rather, you get to pay me to play, and then if you win, good job. Here's a pat on the back, right? But here, give me my venue fee. Like, there's been a couple of those things too. So
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to run through with the group, like, what your ideal is for a tournament payout structure, and then kind of see where that takes us from there.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Well, yeah, I mean, that's something that, yeah, I've been pretty passionate about in terms of like the Arizona fighting game group too. It's just like when I've seen, it's not just like new games, like you said too. It's also like new venues. Like, if there's a new venue that opens up, they might be wanting to run a tournament, and for whatever reasons, whether that's just to bring people into their venue or whether that's to promote their local business, because like I've seen vape shops, I've seen all kinds of places just want to try to do events for whatever reason. It's like, hey, we're gonna hold an event here, and us being the hardcore, we're looking for like setups and lagless monitors and stuff like that. The casual guy walking by that goes to that vape shop to go pick up supplies or whatever might not. He's gonna be like, oh, Mortal Kombat tournament, cool, I'll come by, right? But he's not gonna think anything like that.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, like I remember there was a tournament for Marvel 3 that I played in. I think it was right when Ultimate came out. And for those unfamiliar with Marvel 3, the game performed very, very poorly on PlayStation 3. It would actually drop
Yes.
frames, which would result in dropped combos. I played a character that was impacted by that. And so, we had a guy who ran a local business that was selling like spiritual stuff, like Sedona Vortex, like Reiki crystals. And he just wanted to run a tournament in his shop. And to be clear, like, I don't think there was anything nefarious there. It was just kind of a lack of understanding of what he was trying to do, or like what kind of
Hmm.
community he was catering towards. Because we show up and there was a television that he had brought from his home. It was a giant plasma screen TV with a ton of lag on it, attached to a PlayStation 3. And so, every Marvel player essentially just had a lot of issues with that. And I think the prize for that tournament was store credit, and so we paid to play in that tournament. And again, I think this guy was just trying to throw a nice party, and he was trying to have fun that way. But the competitive community kind of took that, and we're like, we can't like consider this a legitimate tournament. And I remember talking with the owner afterwards and being like, here are a couple things that I think are really necessary for a tournament to be considered legitimate with the competitive community. Number one is that you need to have setups that are agreed upon by the community, and the system of choice for the community. So for Marvel 3, in that case, Xbox 360 was the de facto standard. Secondly, you need to have in addition to the console, but you also need to have a setup like a monitor
Yeah.
that would be lagless, or the minimum amount of lag possible. And again, we didn't have the luxury of like comparing with arcade standards, because at that point we were playing home console
Yeah.
exclusive versions of games. And so to tie it back to what we were talking about earlier about those Asus monitors, that was the standard back then. And so anything that wasn't an Asus monitor essentially was met with scrutiny by the community, because we were like, okay, does it perform better or worse than the Asus monitor? And oftentimes it was worse. And so we would be like, we can't hit our combos on this. Like, I could feel the lag on the character select screen, right? And then the other big piece of it is to make sure that the payment for the tournament is appropriate. Like, if you are pocketing money from the players, the players themselves, like the fighting community has a reputation for being poverty. And the money, I think, doesn't come from the players as far as that goes. I think a lot of TOs come into this being like, we just, we need a model that works, and our clientele are going to be the players, and that's where we're going to make our money. But the reality here is like, these players are, they range from like teenagers to like early 20-year-olds and poor college students. That's like the primary demographic. And so there's just not a
Yeah.
lot of money there. and
No.
and particularly the community that I've grown to love so much here, I don't want to see anybody put through financial hardship to enjoy their hobby. And so like, to essentially like to rip players off Like we don't want that to happen in any way, shape, or form. And so nowadays, I think the model seems to be, stream it and then get YouTube or Twitch revenue from it, and then bring in sponsors that way. But the money comes from outside the community as opposed to from the players themselves, because the players are the ones creating the content, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
so T-Dot, I guess, like just in general, like from you as a TO perspective, like what are your general expectations for like, I guess like venue fees, like paying out people, and then just I guess just general things that you would want people to look out for, uh, to be
Oh,
prepared to
as a
like,
player.
well, yeah, as a player, like if you were entering a local tournament for like the first time.
Oh, well, number one, 100% is read the rules. Like and
Uh,
this is about payout, but it's also about the tournament itself. I can't tell you the number of times I had to like stop people from leaving. I'm like, hey, this is a double elimination tournament. You still have another shot.
yeah,
like you can still play. Like don't
yeah,
waste your like half your money. And so like in those rules, it also has like how the payout does. Like, is there a venue fee? Like, is it gonna be like winner take all, or is it top three, or is it top eight? It has that type of setup. Um, Also, just be mindful about like the space that you're in. If you need to bring your own controller, or if there is like a fee for bringing your own controller, or if they have set like controllers there that you can just pick up and play. Like there were like the AZHP tournaments, like we have controllers there, and like you don't have to bring anything. But if
hmm,
you went to like a tournament at TZZ, you could rent a controller for like I don't know what they're charging, like $5 or something.
yeah, it's like $5 or $10. Yeah,
Yeah. And so like making sure you have that, making sure that you know what system we're playing on. Like if you're constantly playing on computer, make sure that if you know that like you're playing on the tournament's going to be on PlayStation, that your stick works on PlayStation or controller or whatever you're doing. Um, yeah, and yeah, I think that covers it.
So
okay.
if you're running a tournament, like what, and you had to pay out to top three, how would you distribute the tournament pot?
Oh, if I was deciding like 50-30-10 or 60-20-10.
Yeah.
That's 90.
That's not 100, man. Are you
Yeah,
are you
Taking
whatever.
skipping
it,
10 off the
you
top?
taking it 10%.
Yeah, the 10 is a venue fee. What are you talking about?
That's actually a big point too. Is like some venues think like some venues want to take a percentage of the pot, others want to keep the venue fee separate from the pot, and fundamentally the numbers are the same, but psychologically at least the community I don't think likes feeling like they're profiting or being profited off
Yeah,
of.
it always feels
Yeah,
worse when it sounds like the place is taking some from the pot. And so,
yeah,
if you were running that type of thing, I would always recommend that you have a separate venue fee from the pot. And so, like,
yeah,
it doesn't look like, hey, we're just here to like take your money and stuff like that. They know that this money right here is for the venue, like for the space and paying for the power,
yeah,
electricity, and everything like that. And then this money over here, this is for the group, this is for the tournament, this is for the players, this is their payout.
yeah, yeah. That was the big thing I was gonna say, is just kind of the separation of that, because like John said, I mean the fighting game community, the majority of the fighting game community is, it's poverty. Like people are going to these tournaments and they're playing these tournaments, and particularly the top players that are in contention for that money, they want money, right? They want the cash prize. They don't want store credit. They don't want gift cards to this and that. They don't want, some other prize beside that. And I know that's something that I've seen a lot with these, like I mentioned, like the venues or the kind of people outside of the community that come in and want to host events. It's like there's a lot of situations where they'll charge you $15 to enter, and it's just like, okay, well, first place gets $25 plus this, plus some headphones, plus this, and second place gets like $10, and third place gets like their entry back, or something like that, or some lower
Mhm.
amount of money, and then like you start adding up the cash, and you're like, well, what's happening? Say for instance, there's that's a flat fee. That's basically what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah.
And say, for instance, what if there's 30 people that enter this? That payouts in cash is still going to stay the same, and you're taking all the rest of that. Like, where's that going? And that's that's something for, like you said. I mean, it's something to look at in terms of like the flyers or the information about the tournament. Big thing to look for. That's like one example in particular that I remember there was a flyer that went out. I don't know what shop it was for, and they were hosting a tournament, and it was like entry for payout or entry to get in, and then the prizes were like some headphones, and like they were promoting it as like Apple AirPods and this and that. And I was like looking at it, and I'm like, I've seen these headphones on Amazon. They're $20. These aren't Apple AirPods. Like, you can't advertise this as you're giving somebody Apple AirPods. That's a whole, you're being deceptive at that point, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're generic Bluetooth earbuds that you're giving out, and it's not the same thing. It's like, say I'm going to give you this Android tablet, and it's just like, well, is it a Samsung Galaxy 10, whatever version they're at now, or is it some RCA model that it's a bunch of crap that's running like 3 versions of Android, 3 generations ago or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that this percentage thing is not something that people think about if they're outside the FGC.
Oh, really?
I think like outside the FGC, they're like, oh, we gotta think of a prize to give like first, second, and third, and then like they're thinking of like a static thing to give, like whether it be a trophy or like prize or like gift card or something. They're not thinking at like an FGC standpoint where we're expecting a percentage of like the pot.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like if you were to go to a poker tournament and you're like, hey, you get an HDMI cable or something. Like, I have these chips. I'm literally gambling with these chips in my hand right now. And so like, that's the thing, is a lot of people are paying that venue fee or paying the tournament pot, right? And then being like, hey, I know exactly how much money is going in because the bracket itself, the number of players is there. So I know how much money the venue's taking in, and does that amount equate to the value of the prize that I'm receiving? And to be clear, though, like free tournaments are a whole nother beast, because then we're talking about specifically for tournament pots. But like, there's also the idea of a free tournament, and those give static prizes as well. And you can see that on the online tournaments in particular, which I think that actually has to do with some legal things.
And the AZHP tournaments were
also free, right? And then I think the Devastation tournaments that they used to have at the Microsoft Store. Like I entered that strip club tournament that the Devastation guys ran. I won a gift card to Best Buy at a strip club tournament, and it was like, okay, I went in knowing that I wasn't going to spend any money on this tournament. I might have spent money at the venue, but that would have been something different. But so, that $25 gift card was perfectly fine for a tournament entry fee. But if I paid $50 to enter that tournament and I walk out with like a $10 gift certificate to the Gap, that's not going to feel right.
Yeah, I forgot about those. And like, actually, like my old man brain like kicked in, and I was like, oh yeah, I did help out with Devastation.
Oh yeah, you did, huh?
But I was never anytime I helped out with Devastation, I was never main staff, because like I was like, okay, y'all running it, that's fine. And then my friend Paul was one of the people that would help run Devastation, and he would hit me up, and he would be like, hey, we need like one more bracket runner. You want to run a bracket? And I would be like, yeah, sure. And so like one Devastation I ran like Madden. There was like a Madden tournament, and then another one. It was hilarious. I ran Marvel, and that was the first time I ever met Skills That Kills.
Okay.
Like I don't know if that was his first tournament, but that was the first tournament I've ever seen him at.
Okay.
And so it was cool running his bracket and seeing him going through people and making it out on winners. I was like, oh wow, this kid's good.
That's how champions are made.
Yeah.
But I am intrigued by the Madden tournament. What was the payout structure for the Madden? Actually, it was probably a free tournament if it was Devastation, right?
No. It was just like it was a part of Devastation, and it was just like every other tournament there. where it was
Okay.
like payouts and stuff like that.
So
And
how are the payouts distributed for a non-fighting game tournament?
it was, they treated it just like a fighting game tournament.
So like 70,
Oh,
20, 10, basically.
Yeah, as far as I know, I wasn't there to handle the money,
Okay.
but as far as I know, it was, everything was exactly the same as the rest of the fighting game tournaments at that event.
Okay.
gotcha. Yeah, I guess the main thing that I guess we're all trying to get at is one is like you gotta understand like the context of the tournament that you're going to, right? A free tournament,
Hmm.
like your expectations for what you're getting like should be lower. I mean, probably competition might be lower. Who knows? I mean, depending on where it's at, like if it's a con tourney or whatever, if you're going to something that's run or hosted by somebody in the FGC. I don't, it's not really a FGC sanctioned event, but one that people would consider legit. Those you can expect cash prizes, and you should expect like to get a portion of the prize pot from the entries, that kind of thing. So I mean, it's just it's just a matter of understanding the kind of situation the tournaments that you're in, and then like T-Dot said, understanding the rules, because it's just like if
Hmm.
you go to some of these tournaments that if it's a game store, whether Microsoft store or something like that, they might have weird rules. Like I've seen tournaments where they're like, okay, this is single elimination. I was just like, huh? I was just like, we don't run
Yeah,
single elimination tournaments, but I was like, this is what they're doing, so that's their rules. Those are that's what they want to do. That's what we're gonna do over there.
yeah.
Eh,
It's all about understanding what's going on and like having that mindset before you go in there. Like if you know that it's a free tournament, don't expect to be paying out like $100 or whatever. You're probably just gonna get like a prize or whatever they got. And then
Yeah.
if you are putting into a pot, make sure that there's like wording there that they're going to be paying out in that pot, and you're not stuck with little gift card or whatever.
yeah. I think the transparency about where the money is going is probably
Yeah,
the through
that's
line
a
here.
that's a big thing too. Yeah,
Hmm.
Um,
transparency for sure. Yeah.
and and again, some of the best I've gotten like prizes from tournaments that were better than money, like as far as like getting a trophy or again one of the devastation tournaments I won an arcade stick which has like
Yeah.
$150 value, and I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. So like by no means am I saying that the money tournaments are the only legitimate tournaments. And
True.
Oh
also
yeah, yeah. Sure.
we should be we want to have an open mind as far as like what is like anybody who wants to try something new. Like I don't think that like I remember I think it was it us T-Dot or was it Steve? But somebody experimented with paying out top four instead of top three, and I think it was pretty well received. Um,
Yeah. Well, I mean, anytime you
That
can get a
might have been
little piece of
Steve.
that pie.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know. So there's a segment of people that are just like, okay, if you could pay out, even if I can get my venue feedback, like I'll be happy with that, right? It was a good day. And then there's the other segment, more I'd probably say more of the OGs where they're just like, nah, like only the winners. Like that's why I do 70%, because this guy won, he should get the majority of the pot. Everybody else, go do your work. Go
yeah.
back in the lab.
It's kind of hard even to come to a consensus on a lot of that stuff because the top
Yeah.
players that are trying to win the tournament, of course, they're going to say, "Well, yeah, pay me whatever I'm most whatever place I'm most likely to get, but pay out that many people, right?
Yeah.
If I'm gonna place top eight, I think all top eight should pay out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, and then thinking about it, it goes back to this moment that I had back in Anchorage. It's like I had heard from one person that they wanted to do like higher entry fees, right? Instead of the standard five, they wanted to go
Ah,
ten
yes,
dollars.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
and I put in a $10 fee, and then nobody said anything. Like it was I said it like 3 weeks in advance. Nobody said anything until about 3 days before the tournament, and
Yep.
and then there was just like, I think this tournament fee's too high. You're alienating some of the players that aren't as good. And I was just like, why did you wait 3 days before the tournament to give me feedback? Like I had 3 weeks to potentially change this. And now I have the expectation from some of these players that we're playing for $10. So I'm running with it, and tough shit.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
I get that point too. Like, there's some people that are going in potentially, they know that they're pot monsters, or they're not going to do well, and they just want the experience. But it's like, if you're going to give me feedback and give me communication about that, like I need to know about it more in advance so that we can deliberate and talk about this, and I can,
Yeah.
ultimately make a decision that I'm comfortable with instead of kind of waiting to the last minute. Because then at that point, I was like, well, it's not fair to the people that I said, hey, we're going to do this for $10. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And that's a tournament organizer like conundrum too. Is like if I raise the entry fee, I'm like inherently going to get less entrants. And the game the game you have to play is does the pot ultimately equate to if the same amount of people enter? Like, if I have 100 people who entered the tournament at $5 and I raise it to $10 and only 50 people enter, is that better or worse for my tournament overall? And then that can factor into how much space you have in the venue. It can factor into, like, are you catering to the hardcore crowd, and you only want the best, and you want to keep it a very small tight knit group. And there's different philosophies as far as that goes. When it comes to a venue, usually you just want as many people as possible.
Yeah.
But there's constraints there. Another question I had for the group here is, we're coming from this standpoint of like having examined T-Dot's history, and like back then $5 was the standard. In 2022, $5 doesn't have the same kind of weight. So what would be an ideal tournament entry fee per player that you guys would put on a tournament today if you were just to
Yeah.
run a bracket?
No, I got you. Well, one, it's 2023 now, and then
Oh,
two,
shoot.
two. I was
Fair
actually
point.
just thinking about that in my mind too, because I was just like, well, when Street Fighter 6 comes out, would it be better just to start out with 10 and kind of set that standard, and people would just know, like, we're going in for $10, or go back to $5? Because nowadays it's like people are like, well, inflation is kicking my ass. $10 is a little much. I'd rather play 3 games for $5 each instead of just playing one for 10 or two for 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
honestly, me personally, if I ran an event, I would just do $10 at this point.
Uh, I would look and see like what is there to gain from a growing the community standpoint. Like, does $10 hurt anyone? Does it discourage anybody? Like, because I would think, especially like when like a game is new, you want as many people as possible. Then again, I guess like with a game is new, they would be more willing to try it out, but I don't know how much they would stay around if it's like $10 a pop, and then the last time they came, they went 0-2. I I would think that like a new player would kind of more discouraged from like paying $10 plus the venue fee to go 0-2 versus like 5-5. And
Yeah,
so but like I do see like people want more money.
It's a tough one, right?
Uh,
Because
yeah,
like it's not just that people want more money, it's that like if the top players don't show up to your tournament, then less
yeah,
people will just show up in general just due to lack of brand recognition. And then what ends
yeah,
up happening is like your turnouts suffer that way too. And you're like, okay, well, now I just have like not the best of the best, and so the community doesn't treat my tournament as valid, and that's going to make it harder for people to come out to future tournaments. Like there's like this really weird balance you have to strike with catering to the hardcore versus catering to the casual, right? And if you make it too kid gloves friendly, you might not make it worth people's time at the same time. So it's like
yeah,
I don't know. And like I'm actually the pandemic is another like huge aspect to this where as somebody who's part of the Street Fighter community here in Arizona right now, our Street Fighter community is kind of on life support where like everybody's kind of quit the game. It's been for Street Fighter 5 at least, the game is 7 years old at this point or 8 years old at this point. And so it's like no one's really playing it as much anymore, but there are a couple that do. And is it worth charging them a tournament fee on top of a venue fee? And so like when we're trying to just keep the scene alive and keep people playing, and so
hmm
like lately we've just had to just do free tournaments instead. We do ad hoc tournaments at TGZ, or I don't really know what the answer is for a paid tournament in nowadays either, where it's like maybe we just do free tournaments from here on out, and just with the assumption that there's no prize.
Mhm.
Um,
That could be a avenue too, or at least alternative events.
Yeah, like we've run like hybrid Swiss tournaments in the past where like, there's a tournament like what is it? The Everybody pays $5 so to speak, and then the $4 of it goes to the main tournament pot, and then $1 goes to a second chance bracket, and so whoever wins that second chance bracket essentially gets their venue fee back, and you have it so like everybody everybody plays a round robin, and then the top players from that round robin get put into that double elimination bracket. And then the lower level players that don't make it out of the round robin end up in the second chance bracket. And so you do get that one person who wins that bracket and gets to be like, I got my venue fee paid back. This is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from a value proposition standpoint, the players are like, hey, I played rather than going 0 and 2 and playing two matches and then just having to peace out. I played like 8 matches, and
Yeah.
is that worth more of the money?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know. It'll be something that we all. I've definitely been thinking about on the side here or there because, like, I mean, I don't know how involved as a TO I want to be coming or later this year when Street Fighter 6 comes out. It's something that I'm honestly a little bit more interested in doing more than I am playing. But I mean, I'll see how that goes in terms of how my characters are and how much time I can devote and things like that. But we started early because we got to wrap up a little early. T-Dot, was there anything that you wanted to promote or talk about real quick before we kind of give some do a little bit close here?
Promote. Uh,
CFG?
uh yeah. TF. What?
CFG? Do you want to promote them?
Oh, CFG. Oh, yeah. Well, confreaksandgeeks.com. You can always visit there if you want your anime, game, whatever reviews, like any type of nerdy thing, we got it there. If you haven't played Final Fantasy 14, go play Final Fantasy 14. That game is amazing. Arcade in the Box is not here anymore, but it's in our hearts.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have something to promote too. Just to hijack you there, T-Dot. Sorry.
Go for it.
But I mentioned that the Street Fighter scene is on life support right now, and we are currently trying to find ways to keep that scene alive as well as keep the scene ready to go for Street Fighter 6. The Contender Esports guys reached out to me in the past couple weeks, and we set up a day to kind of try their venue out. One of the big concerns about in 2023 here is about setups, specifically that the fact that the fighting game community seems to be switching to PC and seems to be switching to high refresh rate monitors. And Contender Esports in Gilbert has offered to host us and and let us give it a shot. They already run Tekken tournaments and Strive tournaments, and I think a couple other ones. I think they ran a Blaze Blue tournament recently too. And so on January 28th, we are going to have a Street Fighter Casuals Day. And so I'll be promoting that online as well, making images and stuff like that. So me and Benny will be there at least for a little bit, and we're going to be playing Street Fighter 5, all kinds of Street Fighters. There's a party room in the back too that will probably have some of our PC setups as well, playing other Street Fighter games. So feel free to stop by on the 28th, and we'll run casuals, and if there's enough people, maybe we'll run a bracket too. No promises, but hopefully we can get some Tucson people up there too, and just kind of get some new blood into the Street Fighter scene, or get some oxygen into it at the very least, so that way we can be ready for 6 when it drops.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So just to kind of give a recap on everything, we're actually going to take a 2-week break from the podcast. So we'll be back on the 24th of January with actually, we're still kind of hammering that out, but we'll be back on the 24th. The 28th, Street Fighter 6 casuals, or I'm sorry, Street Fighter casuals at the Contender Esports in Gilbert. Yeah, I'll be there a little bit before work just to kind of hang out. I've been wanting to check out the venue anyway, and that gives me a reason to do that. We'll see about future events going on from there.
Do you think that AZ, if I can get the like Texas folks together, do you think we could do like some kind of like online event, like AZ versus Texas?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty awesome. That would be a good way to breathe some life into the Street Fighter 5 scene for sure. Like maybe put together like a 3v3 or something.
Yeah, I
someone
can
that's a little bit more involved in
honestly.
the
I
scene.
haven't talked to the Texas folks too much because like pandemic,
Uh,
and like I haven't gone to many events. But like this is a perfect opportunity to go out and find some folks.
Look
Yeah.
at you, man.
Yeah.
I thought you said you were retired.
I
No, it
keep
was like,
trying, but they keep pulling me back in.
yeah, I was out with the brothers, the Spurlocks yesterday, and that was one of the things one of them brought up. They're just like, why do people announce that they retire? Like, you don't retire, you just kind of like take a back seat, and you end up coming back anyway. And then just to answer the question, yeah, Z Axis is the 28th, but we figured that since this was basically just a Street Fighter thing that we're doing, that we're trying to just bring out the people that would possibly not go to Z Axis, so we're not trying to step on the toes of Dragon Ninja and what he's doing there. It's more kind of just like Jon said, just a casual session and just to kind of get a feel for the venue and see if potentially might be doing something else there in the future.
Yeah, and it was unfortunate timing. It's just we happened to be planning the same thing at the same time, and then we're gonna announce it at the same time. So
yeah, but I mean, yeah, between our schedules, yeah, this was the date that really just worked for me amongst everything else, and like, yeah. So it's nothing against Z Axis at all. Like, support their event. If you were playing Virtua Fighter or DOA or Tekken, go there. You'll have more time to come play Street Fighter casuals with us later.
yep, for sure. All right, guys, have a good night, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Take care.
Yep. Thanks, T-Dot.
Peace.